Good morning, everyone. We're going to wait a few minutes to let people trickle in. We got a pretty full agenda today, so we will get started soon, but we'll just wait until probably 2 or 3 minutes past the hour to get started. Thanks, everyone, for joining. All right, we're just going to wait a few more minutes for folks to come in. I dropped some links in the chat for the Gecko website and the Gecko Cycle 4 Google Drive folder where you can find all of the standards and guidelines and application documents. Let me know if you all cannot see that. And we'll get started in just a few minutes. Thanks everyone for being here. Alrighty, for the sake of time, I'm going to get started. Thanks everyone for joining. My name's Lily Hecker. I am the program manager for the Geothermal Energy Tax Credit offering. Today is the Cycle 4 informational webinar for this program. This program is run by the Colorado Energy Office's Strategic Initiatives and Finance team. Today is October 8th. Awesome. A brief agenda for today. We'll go over some introductions and housekeeping, and then I'll dive into the meat of the presentation to talk about the geothermal energy tax credit offering, our Gecko's investment tax credit, and then our production tax credit. We're also joined today by Anna Moon from the Collective Clean Energy Fund to speak about some of her programs and financing opportunities at CCEF. And then lastly, we will end with questions and answer session. And then we will adjourn at 11. A few meeting norms for today. Please use either the question and Q&A or the question and answer box to type your questions and or use the chat box to type your questions. We will wait to ask questions live until the Q&A session at the end of the webinar. I will also be answering the questions in the chat box or the Q&A box at the end of the webinar, but feel free to keep posting your questions in there as I give this presentation. If you have questions after this webinar, please email us at ceo_geothermal@state.co.us. And this webinar will be recorded and made publicly available on CEO's website in the next week or so. A summary of all the questions and answers that have been submitted during this webinar and throughout the entire application cycle will be posted online. With the caveat of project-specific questions being generalized, everything else will be posted online. Awesome. A few meeting norms. Please engage in a respectful and professional manner. We value diverse perspectives and foster inclusivity, but this presentation is intended for the cycle 4 of the geothermal energy tax credit offering. Again, please post your questions in the Q&A box or the chat box. And then if you have any other feedback, please email us at our geothermal email. Here at the Energy Office, we are driven by a mission and vision, and we like to realize these mission and vision through 3 key pillars of impact. Our mission is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and customer energy costs by advancing clean energy, energy efficiency, and zero-emission vehicles to benefit all Coloradans. Our vision is a prosperous and clean energy future for Colorado. And how we would like to realize these mission and vision is through our 3 pillars of impacts. So the first being economic benefits, like creating jobs, supporting businesses. The second being environmental benefits, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, improving air quality, and promoting sustainable practices. And the third being community benefits, so enhancing energy affordability, equity, reliability, and access for all Coloradans. This program is run by yours truly. My name's Lily Hecker. I'm the program manager for this program. We also have Bryce Carter. He has not joined us today, but he is the geothermal program manager here at the state. We also have hired on a technical consultant for this program to help provide technical overview So technical overview for this program. We are joined today by Nate Dungy, but the Clear Result team also includes Ben Maddock, Eliana Elias, and Jack Phillips. Awesome. So I'll get into a little bit of what the GETCO tax credit is, and then go into the ITC and PTC for this program. So this program was passed into legislation in 2023 through House Bill 23-1272. It authorized $35 million across both an investment and production tax credit. This legislation also created a framework for the GETCO eligibility and processes of administering and managing the program. If you'd like to read more about it, please reference sections 6 and 7 of this House bill. Additionally, in 2024, we passed Senate Bill 24-214. This created a framework for the inclusion of thermal energy networks as an eligible GETCO project type under the ITC. This also allows for tax-exempt entities to be eligible for this program. I apologize, my computer's being a little slow today. So a little bit of overview of program information. Again, this is a $35 million total allocation of the tax credit. The tax credit is 2-pronged or into 2 buckets, the ITC, the investment tax credit, and the production tax credit. It is a refundable merit-based tax credit for projects within the state of Colorado. The program is administered on a semi-annual basis, with application periods opening on April 1st and October 1st biannually until the end of 2032, or until all funding has been allocated or reserved. The ITC hits at high temperature geothermal, so geothermal electricity projects, and low temperature geothermal, for example, like thermal energy network projects. It is important to note that single structure projects are ineligible for GETCO. So if you are looking to install a ground source heat pump to a single building envelope, that would be ineligible for this program. If you have any clarification questions needed on what the definitions of these aspects are, please reference the Google Drive and the investment tax credit standards and guidelines. We have a long list of definitions under that and within that document. So this application period opened on October 1st, so last week, and will be closing December 31st, 2025. Applicants are able to apply for a 30% tax credit for the investment tax credit. This may not exceed $5 million per application, or the production tax credit, which is up to 2 cents per kilowatt hour of geothermal electricity produced. The CEO can reserve credits for current or future years based on anticipated project completion, but it is extremely important to note that credits cannot be reserved for studies or projects completed before the application has been approved and the state contract has been signed by all parties. So who is eligible for this program? This goes across both the investment and production tax credit. We have opened up eligible applicants to tax liable and tax exempt entities under GetCo. For example, these entities can include building owners, campuses like universities, developers, political subdivisions like municipalities, geothermal contractors, corporations, gas and electric service public utilities, and tribal governments. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to either put them in the Q&A box or in the chat, and I will be answering them at the end. So we're going to dive a little bit into the investment tax credit, which is the meat of the program. And again, I apologize, my computer is being slow today. Awesome. So the GetCo ITC is a merit-based refundable tax credit to help fund projects and studies supporting the use of low or zero emission geothermal energy for electricity generation and space heating and cooling in homes, businesses, and communities. The GetCo ITC, if awarded, is a 3-year tax credit with a cap at $5 million per project. It is a 30% tax credit. And additionally, GetCo ITC can be stacked with other incentives like our grant program or other incentives run by either the federal or state governments. It is important to note that it is a merit-based refundable tax credit. This means the credit can be reserved to a qualified applicant that meets the standards guidelines for the approved geothermal energy study or project, or thermal energy network study or project. It is refunded to the applicant by the Colorado Department of Revenue for each applicable tax year. So if you are awarded and would like to claim the credit over the full 3-year period, you would be asking for a refund from the Department of Revenue each year. For tax exempt entities, the tax credit will be refunded in the form of a check from the Department of Revenue. If you are tax liable, the tax credit will be used to refund your tax liability. If the credit exceeds the liability for that income tax year, the remainder will be refunded via a check. So you will be able to realize the full credit every year. But again, the total summation over 5 years, or excuse me, over 3 years cannot exceed the awarded amount. And if that's the $5 million cap, it can't exceed the $5 million cap. So what types of projects and studies are eligible for the ITC? Again, it's 2 buckets. So geothermal electricity projects and thermal energy networks. Again, single structure is not eligible for this program. We've categorized our electricity projects and studies into 3 categories. The first 2 being feasibility studies or projects concerning the identification of a potential geothermal resource. This could include something like a exploration well, confirmation well, or flow testing. And then category 3 is the actual build out of the project itself. So developing the project site. It is important to note in order to qualify for a certain category, you must fulfill the deliverables from the prior categories. So if you'd like to apply for a Category 2, you must fulfill and provide the CEO with the final feasibility study in order to be eligible. You can find a full application checklist and what entails a more description of what each category entails in the standards and guidelines folder that I shared. For thermal energy networks, same concept applies. The first two categories are studies, so feasibility studies and detailed engineering designs, and the third being the thermal energy network project's construction and installation. Same concept applies. In order to be eligible for a certain category, you must fulfill the prior categories. And again, if you're looking for more details on what these categories and different project and study types entail and what is required for these, you can look at the standards and guidelines folder, look at that document, and then in the supporting application documents folder, also in the G Drive, you can find an application checklist. So you can go through and tick off the things that you have in order to be eligible for certain project categories. So what are the different eligible project costs associated with the ITC? What can you request a tax credit for under this program? The majority of these eligible costs are capital costs incurred to complete the project in question, such as labor associated with conducting one of the eligible studies, geothermal energy generation or storage equipment, power generation equipment, capital costs associated with the geothermal energy equipment installation, geothermal site preparation costs associated with the infrastructure costs, equipment shipping costs and assembly costs, construction and installation for either the electricity power plant or the thermal energy network, labor associated with the installation of this project, and infrastructure for distribution of electricity produced by the geothermal system up to the interconnection to the grid. By default, the GECO tax reservation will be 30% of these eligible costs, not to exceed the $5 million cap. You can request a increase to 50% cost coverage, but when filling out the budget spreadsheet, it will only allow you to ask for a 30% tax credit. Within the application, you are able to explain what a 50% cost coverage would look like and why you think that this project deserves the 50%. Like I've mentioned a few times, there are a significant amount of required documentation to be included in your application for this program. To see what is required for each project category, please refer to the application checklist that you can find in the GECO Google Drive under the supporting application documents. Some of the overall attachments that are required for every application type includes a signed property owner consent form, a Secretary of State certification of good standing. This is not needed for tax exempt organizations. Results from your EnviroScreen 2.0 tool, completed CEO provided budget spreadsheet. We have provided you all with a budget spreadsheet that you will have to fill out and upload to your application. All relevant geothermal contractor certifications, a community engagement plan or public involvement plan, letters of support from project stakeholders, a project schedule. We would like to require this project schedule to be in a Gantt chart style. Risk mitigation strategy plan, your organization or entity's W-9, a current W-9 is required, and any other project-specific technical attachments, which you can find in the application checklist. and any other additional information that you would like to provide to the CEO. We always like to encourage that more information is better when reviewing these applications. So our recommended approach for starting an application is to first review the standards and guidelines for the ITC. Go into the Google Drive, select the ITC folder, and find the standards and guidelines there. You can see that the standards and guidelines document, which is our quote-unquote RFA document for this program, includes both the thermal energy networks and the geothermal electricity project types. So read that document thoroughly if you're looking for definitions, project criteria, who's applicable to this program, etc. Once you've reviewed the standards and guidelines, please identify and review the project or study specific standards and guidelines section. And then also there is an associated application document for either a thermal energy network project or study or a geothermal electricity project or study. There's also the corresponding requirements for each application type. Please refer to the application checklist for that. In the standards and guidelines documents, there's links to all of these documents. So that is kind of the main house for all of these things, and it'll help you navigate the G Drive as well. Once you've identified and reviewed the specific requirements for your application type, begin gathering all of the necessary application documents. Like I said, the list from the prior slide. Additionally, start filling out the spreadsheets that are attached or required attachment materials for this program. Next, we recommend, this is not a requirement, but it is a recommendation that you fill out a paper copy of the ITC application and supplementary application documents. Like I said, there is a application question document for either the ITC electricity or ITC thermal energy network application type. We recommend that you fill that out by hand. So then when you open your application on the Salesforce portal, you can just copy and paste and upload the required attachments into the portal. And again, you can find all of these things on the G Drive. So all applications must be submitted electronically to the GetCo application Salesforce portal. You can find the portal on the website within the standards and guidelines document, within the application documents. The link to this portal is, you can find it almost everywhere within the G Drive. To be eligible for an ITC category, project study type, again, I've mentioned this before, but the applicant must fulfill the prior categories. So for example, to apply for a thermal energy construction or installation project, a feasibility and detailed design studies must be completed and submitted with the application. So what you'll do is you'll open the application portal, make a login, fill out the application, upload the required documents and spreadsheets, and then press submit. Oh, and another note is that the computer's slow. Is that the application portal isn't opening until October 13th. So if you would like to get started early, please do the recommended approach that I mentioned on the previous slide. So once you submit an application, then what happens? Your application will go through 3 stages of review. The first being an eligibility review. We make sure that all questions have been answered and required documents have been attached. Then it will go to a technical review. This will review the project application for technical feasibility. If you pass those first 2 reviews, then you will make it to the evaluation committee. Applications will be scored based on the following criteria in the next slides. And then we will make determinations on awards and let you all know. We would like to emphasize that the CEO highly recommends and encourages applicants to submit their applications early. We know that the deadline is December 31st, but determinations on awards are made within 3 months of that closing date. And if you submit earlier, it allows for more time for us to review your application and ask you clarifying questions, which then in turn gives you more time to review those questions and get us answers. If you apply on December 31st, it only allows for 5 days for a return for eligibility review questions from us, and only 10 days to return our questions about your technical review. So if you submit earlier, it allows for those two aspects to have more time, which it allows you to have more time to get us answers. So please, if you can, submit early. So what is your application scored on once you make it to the evaluation committee? There are 8 different categories or scoring criteria with a maximum of points, as you can see on the right side of the chart, with a total point amount of 120 points. You must score at least a 60% to be able to pass eligibility, or excuse me, pass the evaluation criteria in order for us to make a determination on your award. The second bucket of this program is the production tax credit. Some of this information is going to be a little bit repetitive. I'll go into kind of what is the requirements for this program, but the way that you applies to this portion of the tax credit similarly to the ITC. So you'll gather your information and apply on the Salesforce portal. So what is a production tax credit for under GECO? It supports the production of electricity generation from a geothermal resource or power plant. Eligible persons or entities may claim up to 2 cents per kilowatt hour of electricity produced per income tax year. This is a 3-year tax credit with no annual cap. All applicants are required to adhere to and comply with all federal, state, and local regulations, permits, policies, codes, and permitting requirements for the geothermal power plant. The geothermal power plant is subject to verification of the plant's electricity generation by the CEO. And you can see the reporting requirements and what this verification process looks like in the PTC standards and guidelines. So who is eligible for the PTC? Like I mentioned before, persons, corporations, or academic institutions, or gas or electric service utilities, political subdivisions, and tribal governments. So tax liable and tax exempt entities are eligible for this program, for this tax credit. What are the different PTC project types? This list is not comprehensive. This is just what the CEO has seen in the market. If you have a geothermal power plant that's online that does something else than what's on this list, we encourage you to apply for the tax credit. But again, it is important to note, to be able to be eligible for the PTC, your geothermal electricity power plant must already be online. It must already be producing electricity. Some of these projects can include conventional geothermal systems, advanced geothermal systems, enhanced geothermal systems, supercritical hot rock, geothermal power plants with synergistic technologies. It could be powering off-road equipment or charging stations, co-production, and then hybrid energy systems for electricity generation like geothermal and solar, geothermal and wind, and geothermal hydrogen production. So when filling out a PTC application, what does this look like? What is required? Again, you can find a comprehensive application checklist on the Google Drive. Some things included in the PTC application includes a completed PTC application in Salesforce, the required attestation, which you will sign via the Salesforce portal, applicable permits from the Energy Commission or Energy and Carbon Management Commission or the Department of Water Resources, all of the contractor certifications for this power plant, the power plant owner or operator consent form, the organization's current W-9, a power purchase agreement if it's applicable, and any other information attachments that the applicant would like to provide to the CEO for consideration. Again, the more information, the better. The review of the PTC application is a little bit different than the ITC. Essentially, we'll intake your application. If you pass the technical review, the applicant will be registered with the CEO, will go under contract. And then what happens on an annual basis is that the CEO will require pictures of the electricity generated data no later than January 15th of each year. You will then be submitting a cost certificate to the CEO claiming the amount of kilowatt hour PTC credit that you would like to claim. Again, we would verify this, and then I would be doing the back end work with the Department of Revenue to make sure that the credit is being realized by the entity. What you would do is file your taxes as normal, but claim the credit on your taxes, and I will do the back end work to make sure that that tax credit is realized on your income tax return. Same process applies to the PTC. Please apply on the Salesforce portal. We recommend filling out a paper copy of the application. Applicants, so an entity can only complete one application relevant to the PTC for the year. And again, that tax credit is good for 3 years. The portal's opening on October 13th, and the process is the same for the ITC as for the PTC. So this is kind of a generic overview of what's going to happen over the next 6 months. The GetCo application period opened on October 1st and will be closing December 31st. Starting, so today is October 8th when we're hosting the informational webinar. Starting next week on October 14th, we will be hosting bi-weekly office hours. If you have questions about projects, need clarifications provided on how to apply, please join the office hours. Again, all questions asked during the open application period, whether if you submit that via email or ask them live in the office hours, will be made public on our Q&A document. You can submit an application between now and December 31st. The application period is closing at 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. That's a typo right there. I apologize. And then estimated notification on awards will be made on March 31st. We are required by legislation to get you all a notification on the intent to award, not award, or partial award by March 31st, which reiterates my point of please apply early because it allows for you to provide the CEO with clarifications if we need it for your application. The portal is opening on October 13th, next week. So what happens if you are awarded? Congratulations, you're awarded a tax credit through GetCo. Now what? The CEO and the awardee will then begin the development of a statement of work requiring the different reporting requirements and duties underneath the tax credit. You can find a sample, or you can find samples of what's required, what reporting requirements are due for each project type in the standards and guidelines. The CEO has the authority to expand the reporting requirements, and during this first bullet point is when that negotiation or when that conversation would happen with the awardee. And then once the statement of work has been finalized, the awardee and the CEO will enter a tax credit agreement. You can find a sample language of either an intergovernmental, so a tax-exempt entity's tax credit agreement, or just a regular tax credit agreement. You can find sample languages for those two documents on the Google Drive. So if you're looking at what is the state's legalese around this program, please reference those documents. If you have questions or concerns about that, We also allow for you to submit a tax credit agreement with red lines, so we can kind of do the back end work before someone is potentially awarded. That being said, the tax credit cannot begin, you can not start incurring costs associated with the tax credit until the statement of work and the tax credit agreement have been signed by all parties. So we recommend that you bake in about a month or two after the notification of award into your project schedule to accommodate for that contracting period. But once that effective date hits, then you can start incurring the costs associated with the tax credit. The awardee will be also submitting mid-year project development progress reports to the CEO for up to 3 years. The awardee will then complete the annual third-party audited, what we're calling a tax credit cost certificate request in Q1 of the calendar year for every year of this 3-year period to the CEO. So the entity can claim the credit once per year over that 3-year period. But the tax credit cost certificate request is required to be audited by a third-party CPA, so a certified public accountant. That package, that report, and that audited of your expenses, that submission to the CEO in Q1 of the calendar year of every year of your credit period is the signal to the CEO saying, hey, we would like to claim this much of the tax credit on our income tax return this year. And then we will issue the tax credit. If your tax credit cost certificate has been approved by the CEO, we will let you know and within Q1 of the calendar year. Then we will issue the tax credit. I will work with the Department of Revenue to make sure that tax credit is realized. If you are a tax exempt entity and you're like, how do I claim that? In the tax credit agreement, you can find there is a Department of Revenue document that you will be filling out and submitting to the DOR every year in order to claim the credit. But you can find the example of that document in the tax credit agreement. These steps 3 through 6, will be repeated every year for 3 years if you would like to claim the credit over a 3-year period. Within either the 3rd year or when the project has been completed, then you will submit a notification of project completion report to the CEO. The signals to the CEO that the GetCo awarded project has been completed. And then after your final claim of the tax credit, the awardee will be submitting, project reports to the CEO for at least 4 years after receiving the tax credit. Please note that the reservation request cannot exceed 30% of the eligible project costs performed during the year unless otherwise awarded. The tax credit is valid for 3 years, and the summed value of all of the awarded tax years to date cannot exceed the total awarded amount. So if you want to claim the tax credit over 3 years and you're awarded by the CEO $5 million, the summation over those 3 years cannot exceed $5 million. Some important notices, and then I'll have Anna take over to talk about her programs. The CEO encourages eligible entities to submit applications early during the funding cycle. This not only makes our lives a lot easier and allows for a more thorough review, but it also allows for you all to get us answers to your questions over more time. Sometimes it's harder to get answers to questions within 10 business days. So if you submit earlier, it kind of opens up that conversation with the CEO so we are able to give you feedback on your application. We cannot give you feedback on your application until you submit. If awarded, no tax credit related work, and I mentioned this before, so no tax credit related work or expenses can be carried out or incurred before the tax credit agreement and associated statement statement of work has been completed and signed by all parties. So we recommend that you bake in about 2 months after March 31st to make sure that you're accommodating for that contracting period, and start incurring those eligible expenditures in and around Q2 of the calendar year of next year. That process and time allocation can be repeated in future application rounds too, so please be accommodating to that when scheduling out your project. All right, I will turn it over to Anna now. She is going to talk about the Collective Clean Energy Fund programs. Thanks, Anna.
Thank you, Lily. Thank you for having me here today. So yeah, I'll be presenting about the Collective Clean Energy Fund, formerly known as Colorado Clean Energy Fund. We recently updated our name. So I head up business development for CSEF, and in that role, I engage with project owners to inform folks about the financing solutions that we offer and also to work on collaborative efforts. So, who is CSEF? So, we are a mission driven nonprofit investment fund providing financing for energy related projects. And so, as Colorado's Green Bank, our goal is to increase access to financing for clean energy projects and fill gaps in the marketplace. We do this in a couple of different ways. And so the first way is by providing concessionary capital at below market interest rates to enable more clean energy projects to financially pencil out on a monthly cash flow basis. So if you have a clean energy project and you're looking at offerings from traditional banks, and if the interest rate isn't low enough that it's making your project pencil out, or if they're not able to go longer term, or if they have certain requirements that you can't meet, we do tend to be more flexible. So we're happy to take a look at your project and see if it's something that we can help you out with. And the second way in which we try to fill gaps is that, we make a concerted effort to reach project owners that historically have had a harder time getting loans from banks. So that difficulty could be because of the project type, the borrower type, or even just lack of access to capital in their specific geography. And so we do try to reach out to rural communities that might be doing different projects, whether it's geothermal or solar or agrivoltaic, to make sure that folks who are wanting to pursue clean energy projects have access to the financing they need in order to make their projects happen. And then in terms of our purpose, it is centered around helping to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So that is a pretty broad scope, which means that a lot of different measures will qualify for our financing. And we have experts on staff who understand clean energy and can provide insight into the cost benefits of various technologies and also help determine the best structure for financing your specific project. We got our start back in 2021 with initial grant funding from the state of Colorado, and we've been continuing to expand our reach since then. We have two different parts of the organization. The first part is the residential side of our business, where we provide financing to homeowners. The second, which will be more relevant to folks here today, is our commercial side, and we provide loans to businesses, nonprofits, and a variety of other entity types. And if you're an entity type that we don't currently provide loans to, we do have a wide network of folks that we can reach out to and connect you to that can provide financing if you're a better fit for them. So we can certainly help make those connections. As mentioned before, we support a wide range of different measures, and that can include heat pumps and other building electrification projects, geothermal, solar and storage, EV charging, water conservation. So the list is really long. So yeah, if you have questions, always feel free to reach out. And in terms of the way our loan product is structured, we did recently streamline our offerings to really focus on the key needs that we've seen in our state. And so to that end, our products have been simplified to two main types of loans. And the first is the energy improvement loan, and the second is the bridge to incentive loan. So going into a little bit more detail about the energy improvement loan, this loan goes up to 1 million, but larger requests are considered. And also, we can work collaboratively with other lenders. And so if you have a project that's 5 million or 20 million, we can put in a certain amount and then have another lender come in and blend capital with us so that we can decrease the interest rate at that blended average. Our terms go from 2 to 15 year terms. And again, even on the term length, depending on the project, we can be flexible there as well. The way this term loan is typically structured is that we'll provide up to 50% of the loan at closing to cover materials and equipment costs. And then the rest of the loan gets dispersed once the project is completed. In terms of principal and interest payments, that is due starting 30 days after closing for the entire loan amount. So that's something to consider as well as you look at the cash flow of your project during construction and then post implementation. So when you look at this loan in conjunction with the refundable tax credit that's offered through CEO, we can take it's in certain ways it's stackable, so you can get the tax credit approved, and then we'll provide you a term loan so that you have capital up front to do the construction and implement the project. And then you can pay off the loan as you go or once the project is completed, or even after, we're happy to extend that loan for up to 15 years so that you're able to utilize the refundable tax credit and have that just be part of your cash flow and still hold on to this loan so that your payback is spread over a longer period of time. And then we do have a specific loan for certain types of incentives. So let's say you're doing, geothermal for heating and cooling, and you have heat pumps associated with that project. If you're tapping into some of the grants and rebates that are available for that, and if those incentives can be reassigned to CSAF, then you can take advantage of this bridge to incentive loan in addition to the energy improvement loan. And the way this works is that we use that reassignment of the incentive as the collateral. And then we're able to provide a bridge loan for the exact amount of the incentive. And while you're using that capital to implement your project, we only require interest to be paid. And when the project is completed and the incentive gets paid out, that gets paid out directly to CSAF, that pays off the loan and closes out the loan. And so this is the way in which we're trying to make more grants and incentives accessible to folks who might not have the capital up front. And this can act as kind of that bridge of the time gap between being paid for being paid the incentive and the start of the project. So if you are interested in learning more about how you can leverage the financing offered by us, you can either reach out to me if you have questions, or if you have a pretty clear idea of the scope of your project, I'd recommend going to our website and filling out our commercial project intake form. And this intake form is not a loan application. This is a way for us to just collect some basic information about your project so that when we reach out to you to schedule an intake meeting, we can have an informed conversation. And from there, we can figure out what the right structure would be, what our latest offering would be in terms of interest rates, and then move on to loan application. Typically, the timeline for the loan application, once you've submitted all the required documents, is about 30 days. That being said, it's a lot better if you can reach out to us earlier on. That way we can answer questions, make sure you have the right documents, etc., so that when you are ready to submit, you have the correct full loan package and we can move through the underwriting pretty quickly. And yeah, as mentioned, if you have any questions, please reach out to me. Happy to set up a time to chat, to review your project details. and see what ways we can assist you.
Thanks, Anna. Really appreciate it. If you all have questions for Anna, please reach out to her. Her programs are really great, and we encourage stacking across different programs offered by the state. So please reach out to her if you are interested in her programs. Next, we are going to get into the Q&A session. And let me just do this. So I've been answering some of the questions in the Q&A box. While Anna's been presenting, what will happen is that for this portion of the webinar, and I understand that we only have 10 minutes left, so if your question is not answered, reference the Q&A document in the next day or so, as that will be updated with the answers to your questions. So how you can ask your question is either you can raise your hand and I will unmute you and you can speak your question out loud. You can type a comment in the chat, so either in the chat box or in the Q&A box. Or you can email us at ceo_geothermal@state.co.us. But what I'm going to do, I've been answering some of the questions in the chat box, but I'm just going to run down the list. I'm going to say the question out loud, and then I'll give a verbal answer as well. If you'd like to virtually raise your hand, I will just unmute you in the order in which you raised your hand. So that's kind of how that's going to go. So the first question is, how much of the $35 million budget still remains? After our cycle 2 awardee announcement, we had about, if I'm remembering correctly, we had about a little under $22 million left in the pot. We will be making an announcement on cycle 3 awardees in the coming day or so, but around 14 million still remains in the pot after that announcement. And that 14-ish around, and again, a formal announcement will be made with the exact number in the coming days, goes for both the ITC and the PTC. So a few questions from Josephine is, her first question is, can we apply for multiple rounds? So first a feasibility study, then an engineering design, and then project build out? Or are we limited to the number of times we can apply, or should we save grant funding for a project when it is most lucrative? I'm going to answer your question backwards. So I would recommend requesting financing for the portion of the project that you would foresee to be most necessary. But you are able to apply across multiple rounds. Just the total project cap will be $5 million. So if you want to apply for a feasibility study and you're asking for $500,000 for that, and then you're awarded that amount, then you, for future rounds, that project would be then eligible for $4.5 million, right? Being awarded for one type of project or one study type does not guarantee that you will be awarded in future rounds. Again, I'd like to reiterate, in order to be eligible for certain project types, you must fulfill prior categories. So if you wanted to request financing for a detailed design study, you must submit a pre-feasibility or feasibility study in order to maintain eligibility for that. So the number of times is not limited. It's just the project is limited by the cap, the $5 million cap. And that is a summation across all of your potential applications. Our second question is, are test boreholes required prior to detailed engineering study as a part of the feasibility study? You can find a full list of what is required under each application type in the application checklist in the Google Drive folder. So if you go into the Google Drive folder that I submitted or put in the chat at the beginning of the webinar, you can then navigate to the supporting application folder. If you go under the ITC application checklist, you can see what is required for each one. Her third question is, does every building on a network have to be 100% geothermal heated, asking because one of the buildings on the proposed network is a large church and we may not have enough land area for fully heat the church with geothermal wells. However, we can probably meet 75 plus if it needs to be 100. 100% heating and cooling is not required by this program, but again, please read the standards and guidelines for how we will require you reporting this data if you are awarded. Rhonda asked, can a single building with multiple occupants apply? No, a single building envelope, so a single structure is not eligible for this program. It has to be multiple building envelopes. And if you're looking for a definition of what the CEO dubs a building envelope, you can look at our standards and guidelines document. Sheldon asks, this may have been asked or answered early, but are we allowed to apply for both the ITC and federal rebates? Yes, we encourage stacking. Please stack as many incentives as you would like. There is no limit on how much we require for from other programs. Yeah, so please stack programs. We understand that the landscape is a little volatile right now when it comes to incentives across the country. So if you can, please do apply for other programs. You are not limited. We will just ask that you provide, there's an answer in the application or a question in the application that asks for you to explain the other incentives that you have applied for. Some of the other questions that I answered in the Q&A box was, does geothermal electric generation for hydrogen generation have any adders or preferences? Please refer to the PTC standards and guidelines for that. It was also asked if ITC grants were received for early stages activity studies, etc. Is the same project eligible for the PTC? Yes, just like to clarify that this is not a grant though, this is a tax credit. And again, you can apply across multiple categories. You just can't exceed that $5 million cap under the ITC. And being awarded for one category does not guarantee that you will be awarded for future categories. Is the PTC for 3 years? Yes, it is. And Sheldon asked if the webinar is going to be recorded, and yes, it will be. I will be posting the YouTube link to that in the coming days. So look out for that on the website. Kara in the chat asked, can we apply for the investment tax credit for both Colorado and federal incentives? Yes, please stack your incentives. Can you repost the link to the Google Drive? Yes, I can. I'll put it in the chat. You can also find the link to the Google Drive on the website. I think, and Josephine, let me know if that's not the correct one, but you can also find the link to the or the Google Drive in the website, on the website. All right, I'll keep a look at the chat and the Q&A box. If you'd like to ask a question live, feel free to raise your hand. But thank you all for joining today. We really appreciate your time. We're super excited that we still can offer this program. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to us via email, sign up for our office hours. We are happy to be of resource. And if you can, please apply early. Thanks, Walter.